my gosh!
How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to show you some of the biggest mistakes that people are making while building their weapons in MW3. Everything that I show you today is going to be geared towards making a weapon that's best for you, because I know that just because a weapon works well for me doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for you. Maybe you like a little bit more recoil control, maybe you like to build into mobility a little bit more, but either way I've got some information that'll help you make all the right choices in MW3. If you're new, enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like and subbing to the channel. I appreciate you guys. Getting right into it, I'm going to be using the MCW as an example. It's a great gun, you should be using it. But the first thing I want to talk about is the recoil control, some of the attachment that you should be using in MW3 as compared to something like MW2. So in MW2, a lot of people, you'd see them use the FTAC Ripper. You know, it was a great attachment, gave us a good amount of recoil control, but it did hurt your handling and mobility quite a bit. So as you can see, thanks to detailed stats, it gave us about a 4% decrease in our recoil and some pretty substantial increases in our mobility and handling, which is not good. So as you can see, that's signified in red here. It gives us about 12.5 increase to our ADS speed. Go from about 240 milliseconds to about 270. So that's 30 milliseconds, which when you're fighting someone can make all the difference. But for MW3, we got some better options now. So one of the first things that you should be looking for are your stock option. The RB Regal Heavy Stock. It's one of my favorite attachments, and in most cases, your gun is going to have a stock like this one. So be looking in all your guns to see if they have this hidden gem like they do for the MCW. So the heavy stock actually gives us about a 23, almost 24% in our gun kick control, and 13.5% on both horizontal and vertical recoil control. So that's a lot of recoil control. When it comes to our cons are less than the FTAC Ripper ever was. So we only have a 3% increase, which is only 8 milliseconds. Again, the default value is 240, and our new value is only 248. So that's an 8 millisecond increase. You're not even going to notice that in game. You're not going to notice that at all. And when it comes to other things, we got such small values, 0.8%, 1%. Hipfire, that's not even a big deal because you're on an AR, so this is going to be an awesome attachment if you want to lessen your recoil on something. So I'm going to go ahead and throw on that heavy stock. Say we're in Warzone and we need to throw on an extra recoil attachment. There are still some great underbarrel attachments. One of my favorite being the angled grip. It gives us an additional horizontal recoil control and recoil gun kick control. And so again, if I'm looking at the FTAC Ripper, only gave us 4%. With lots of decreases in our mobility and handling. And if we go over to the angled grip, we're getting no hurt to our mobility or handling or accuracy. So the only thing that's hurting is our vertical recoil control, which isn't a big deal because it's one of the easiest things to combat in the game. You're just gonna have to pull down that right thumbstick just a little bit more. If you're on a mouse and keyboard like I am, just pull down just a little bit more. It's not that big a deal. We want to be focusing on horizontal recoil and our gun kick control. Say you're maybe on a battle rifle or an LMG, something that kick and shake your weapon a little bit more. You got a lot of visual recoil. One of my favorite attachments is actually the Bruin Heavy Support Grip. So this thing gives us a bigger reduction in our recoil gun kick, about 14.5%. So awesome attachment. And compared to something like the FTAC Ripper, even though it does hurt my ADS speed a little bit, it's not as bad as the FTAC Ripper ever was. So we're only at 10.1%. Hurting our ADS speed just a little bit, but for some of those heavier hitting guns that have a lot of recoil, it's definitely worth it, and it's one of my go-tos on battle rifles and LMGs. So if I go ahead and throw those two attachments on and an optic of your choosing, go ahead and bring this into the firing range to see how we're looking so far. As you can see, there is next to no recoil. Pretty solid if you ask me, and this is on a longer range zoomed optic. I think for Warzone especially, a lot of people are going to be going back to higher zoom optics on their ARs, and this Choreo Eagle Eye is going to be a good one for sure. So make sure you go ahead and unlock this as well. I know I'm going to be going into Warzone day one with that equipped. Next thing I want to talk about were some of your magazines, and this is actually a pretty big one because I see a lot of people opting, especially in multiplayer, for some of these smaller round magazines, like let's just say the 40 round mag, for example. As you can see, the bigger mag that you get, the more mobility and handling penalties you'll receive. So if I look at this 40 round mag, I get about a 5.8 reduction in my ADS speed. And then I look at the 60 round drum, well, I'm getting a 12.9. So that's almost twice as much as the one before. But on specific guns, I would actually say go ahead and run the bigger magazine, even in multiplayer. So if we have the 60 round drum mag, as you can see, it's a percentage increase. So if your default value is only 240 milliseconds, that's a really low number. And so for something like that, if we're looking at 5.8% of a low number and 12.9% of a low number, their ending number is still going to be pretty low. So like if I have the 5.8 at 254 milliseconds and then I have the 12.9, I'm only sitting at 271, which is a very, very small increase. And for some things, it's going to be even smaller. So like if I look at my sprint speed, for example, which is a 1.4% reduction at 5.4 milliseconds, or I have a 2.9%, which is a 5.3. But the difference between 5.3 and 5.4 is only 0.1 increase. So on paper, the number looks a lot worse than it actually is. It's going to be such a small increase to where most of the time you're not even going to notice it. So I'd go ahead and say run that bigger magazine. It's always nice to have more bullets in the mag, and the penalties aren't as bad as they were in previous games. Last thing I want to talk about was actually some of the muzzles and suppressors that you should be using for MW3 in Warzone. The first of which that I have tend to really like is the Spirit Fire. Spirit Fire is great because it helps not only our damage range and bullet velocity, but also our recoil control. So it gives us about a 7-point reduction on horizontal and vertical, while giving us pretty good values for damage range and bullet velocity. The one downside about this is it does hurt our ADS speed pretty bad, and it does hurt our sprint to fire just a little bit. So if you were looking to go into mobility a little bit more, wanted to go a little faster, you could always use something like the Sonic Suppressor, which is another really great option. The one downside about the Sonic, although it doesn't hurt your ADS speed, it does hurt your recoil just a little bit. But as long as you've got those attachments that we talked about earlier, you're not even going to notice this. So it's always nice to have something that helps our damage range, helps our bullet velocity, but has minimal increases to our handling. So I know really aggressive players are going to love this option. Another great choice for guns that you don't have to worry about recoil on. Another thing I want to talk about is keeping an eye on some of the MW2 attachments. So a lot of the MW2 attachments have changed. The biggest one being the suppressors. One of my favorites to use in MW2 was the Harbinger suppressor. So in MW2, it actually helped us with damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control. But in this game, you can see that they have actually changed that. So they no longer help your damage range, they actually hurt your damage range. So the only suppressors that are going to be helping you anymore are just those two MW2 suppressors I've told you about. So things like the Harbinger or the Echolist, which used to give you an increase, actually hurt you now. So you want to make sure that the attachment is doing what you think it's doing. So keep an eye on those detailed stats and you should be good to go. Next thing I'm going to do is show you some of the builds that I'm rocking right now, and also a few builds that I think are going to be really strong in Warzone when it drops on December 6th. So primarily in multiplayer, you'll see me rocking the MCW. Again, I'll be using the Regal Heavy Stock like I showed before, the High Grain Ammunition, the Cyclone Barrel, and the Komodo Heavy Compensator. For the most part, I'll be rocking the Mark III reflector on almost all my guns. It's a really clean sight picture, and it feels really nice in game. As far as SMGs goes, for the most part, I'm using the WSP Swarm. Definitely one of the fastest killing guns in the game. It's absolutely nasty with the right attachments, and you should definitely give this build a try. I'm using the FSS Fortress Heavy Stock, the Reckless Long Barrel, the Sonic Suppressor, and the 50-round mag. Now, if we're looking at builds for Warzone, I would build out the gun just a little bit differently. I put a longer range optic on there, put on the 60-round drum, and instead of the compensator, I'm actually going to run that Spirit Fire suppressor, and should be looking pretty good come Warzone 3. It's going to be an awesome gun. Next to no recoil at all, and it's feeling pretty good in the firing range. Another gun that I think is going to be really good in Warzone 3 is actually the GG58 LSW. It's an LMG. Got an awesome base mag, so instead of using a magazine attachment, we can actually use an additional attachment towards recoil or bullet velocity. So you'll see a lot of the same things again when we're using a recoil reduction stock, either the Spirit Fire suppressor, lots of the same familiar attachments. Again, feeling great in the firing range, and be an awesome option. That's all for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If there's anything else you'd like to know, leave a comment down in the description, and I'll try and get a video out as soon as possible. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.